Hi, so today I'll be explaining a third technique in the meditation practice, and this is called mindful prostration. Now, prostration is something which is well familiar to many Buddhists around the world and many religious people around the world. Some people will use it, for instance, in Thailand, to pay respect to one's parents or pay respect to one's teachers. In some religions, they will use it as a means of paying respect or worshipping a god or an angel or some higher divinity. In the meditation practice, it is a means of paying respect to the meditation practice. So it's done before the walking and before the sitting, and it's done simply to create a state of respect and humility and gratitude towards the meditation practice as something which is of value to us. It's also a means of starting the mind on the right track, or creating mindfulness in the mind before we actually go ahead to do the walking and then do the sitting. So I'll now demonstrate how to do what is called a mindful prostration. First of all, I'll show how to do the Thai method of prostration, which is used to pay respect to one's parents and one's teachers. And I'll show this because it will be a framework, a basis, a model for the mindful prostration. So you can see what it should look like. So in Thailand, prostration is done with one sitting on one's knees. The traditional way is to sit up on one's toes, but if this is uncomfortable, you can sit down on the tops of your feet. And an ordinary prostration is performed with the hands coming up to the chest, then up to the forehead, between the eyebrows, and then the hands go down, and they will come out in a W pattern with the thumbs touching, and they will touch the floor. And they have to be far out enough so that the elbows can come to rest in front of the knees, not on top of the knees or to the side. When the elbows are touching in front of the knees and the hands are on the floor, the forehead goes down and touches the thumbs between the eyebrows. And back up again to the chest. And this is done 3 times as follows. Now the mindful prostration is similar and is based on the Thai prostration. But in this case it's a meditation practice as well, so it's done slowly and it's with the mind focused on, this time, on the hand. So when the hand turns, one creates a clear thought, turning. And one says it to oneself 3 times, turning, turning, turning. When the hand starts to raise, one says raising, raising, raising 3 times. And it's in time with the motion. So again, since we're practicing based on what's really happening, we have to do it as the movement occurs. We can't say to ourselves first raising, 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 and then raise the hand. Or raise first and then say raising, raising, raising. It has to be done at the same time as the movement. So starting again, turning, turning, turning. Raising, 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 touching, 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 turning, 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 raising, 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 touching, 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 raising, 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 touching, 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 lowering, 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 touching, 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 bending, 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 lowering, 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 touching, 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 covering, 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 lowering, 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 touching, 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 covering, 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 bending, 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 touching, 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 raising, 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 turning, 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 and so on. From this point on, it repeats itself. So turning, 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 raising, 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 touching, 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 turning, 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 raising, 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 touching, 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 and up again to the forehead, down, and so on. And it repeats this process 3 times. Slowly, slowly, each time taking the time to say turning, 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 raising, 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 and so on. Okay? Once one has done this 3 times and one finishes turning, turning, turning as usual, raising, 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 touching, touching, and so on. After the 3rd time one has done prostration, one comes back up to this point and finishes off, raising, 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 touching, 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 lowering, 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 touching, 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 and instead of bending, bending, bending again, one brings one's hand back to one's thighs, lowering, 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 touching, 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 covering, 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 lowering, 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 touching, 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 covering, covering, covering. And when one has finished this, one then continues on with the walking meditation. Walking right goes thus, left goes thus, right goes thus to the end, and back and forth. And one will generally do walking for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, depending on one's energy and one's willpower. After doing the walking meditation, one will do the sitting meditation. And it's important that these 3 meditation techniques are done in sequence, without any break in between. I'll talk more about that in my next video. But for now, this is a brief demonstration on how to do what is called mindful prostration, or a way of paying respect to the meditation practice and setting up one's mindfulness for the walking and the sitting meditation which follow. Thanks for tuning in, and that's all for today.